You want to move me to the floor, Mike? So I was trying to determine whether or not I wanted to do this up there or down here. And I decided at the last minute, I'm going to do it on the floor. Don't normally get to do lessons from the floor. So, it's interesting when you think about who we are. It's interesting when you think about what we are. And it's interesting to think about why we are. God is amazing. I love the song you just led. God is love. That song says a lot in just those 3 verses. Because without the love of God, we would not understand truly who God is. Because there's more to God than the fact that He's a heavenly being. When you and I really don't understand what that really means of heavenly, because we've never been there. We've never physically seen it. We haven't physically touched it. There have been people, we talked about this a couple of times on Wednesday night in our class. There have been people that have gone into space and come back and say, well, I didn't see a God. Well, that's because you were looking in the wrong place. You're looking in space instead of where He really is. You see, God is greater than anything that man could ever come up with. God is the one in whom we need to return to, and we need to turn to, so that we can have the forgiveness that we truly need in our life, because, let's face it, we're sinful. Traveling down the road, Caleb was with me in the vehicle. We were going down the road that Stony Point's on. And they had a great sign on their marquee at the time we were coming down the road. They had on there, I is in the center of sin. And I thought, man, that says so much. Because I am the reason for sin. I am the one that causes me to sin. You see, we are the sinner. We try to make ourselves the sinner, even. And when we truly understand what God has done and why He's done it, it's so amazing in the life we have. We've been having things run through our year. And this month, it's been on refocusing. And so I thought, what a great way to start, or to be in the middle of it, to talk about refocus. Because that's what we need to do at times. We need to be able to just refocus. We need to be able to do and to live in such a way that we can pull out and we can go, you know what? I need to just sit and be still and focus on God. How many people do that? We are in a fast-paced, everything now society. Would you disagree with me on that? I hope not, because we are. We expect everything to be done instantly. You fire up a computer, you expect that computer to be done. It's there. You turn on your cell phone, you expect everything to happen right off. You got it at your fingertips. And lo and behold, let a tower go down, and oh my goodness, people lose their minds. We go to a restaurant, we want our food instantly. We go to the store, we've even got it now to where you don't have to even go in the store. You can call, you can order ahead and go pick up your groceries. Somebody will bring them out to your car for you. We're a fast-paced, want-it-now society. What we need to do is stop and refocus on what God has given us and what we have because of Him. I want to read Revelation chapter 3, verses 7 through 13. And I want us to think about these words as we read them. This is entitled The Faithful Church. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name. Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Because you have kept my command to preserve, I also will keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no one may take your crown. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write on him my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Roll back up to verse 12 again. He who overcomes, we have overcome. Look what it says. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in my temple, in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write on him my new name. If you are a Christian, if you have been faithful and holy to God, if you are willing to do the will that God has set forth, you have that new name. You already have the name of God written on your forehead. You already have the name New Jerusalem written. You already have your name in the Lamb's Book of Life. If you have been faithful to God. You know, it's so amazing. I hear people all the time talk about from the book of Revelation referencing and say, oh, you don't want to get the mark of the beast. You know, you don't have a choice. You have one of two marks, according to the book. Do you realize that? One of two marks. You either have the mark of the beast or you have the mark of God. You know what the mark of the beast is? You know how to get that? Do you know what it takes to have the mark of the beast? Don't obey God. Don't be faithful to him. Don't be obedient in the things that he's given. And you'll have that mark, regardless. You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to stand in a line. You will have that mark. But if you've been obedient, you'll be the opposite. You'll have the mark of God. What an amazing concept that he's given us. So here's some things this morning I want us to think about as we look at refocusing. I want us to be able to take these ideas with us and to run with them. Because here's the case. We're a small congregation, aren't we? You can shake your head yes, because we are. We're a small congregation. But do you know that just because we're a small congregation doesn't make us a dead congregation? I know a lot of large congregations that are dead congregations, and I'm not talking about the activities they have. I'm talking about the spirituality they have. Just because you're small doesn't mean anything. I was always I was always taught that big things come in small packages. Hey, that's Cloverdale. Because no matter how small people may look at us, you know how big we are to God? Think about it in those fashions and those thoughts. So here's a question I want to ask. And as we look at refocusing ourselves, who or what is important in your life? You ever thought about that question? Who or what is important in your life? In John chapter 18, verse 37, Jesus is talking. And he tells what needs to be important in our life. And what he tells is that we need to take up our cross and follow him. What does that mean, take up our cross? That means that the life you and I live needs to mirror who we follow. And if we follow Christ, you know, it's so amazing when you think about this. If you follow Christ, I want you to think about this. Christ was insulted. Christ was put down. Christ was, they tried to discredit him. They tried to kill him. I want you to remember the old adage, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, it must be a duck, right? If we walk like Christ and we talk like Christ, be prepared to be crucified like Christ. Now, I don't literally mean they're going to put us on a cross. I mean people are going to be ugly and downright mean to us. Why? Because we speak truth. Who or what is important in our life? I got a couple of things that are important in my life. My family is important in my life. I would hope family is important in everybody's life, but they're not always that case. There are some families that they're so splintered and broke apart that they'll never have that connection that they really need to have. But here's the truth of the matter. In most cases, family is important. Needs to be. But you know, in our life, there's two families that need to be important. There's our physical family, the father, mother, husband, wife, child, parent concept. But then there's the second family, and that's our spiritual family. And the reason our spiritual family needs to be important is because without one another, it makes it more difficult for us to walk through this life. I hear frequently these days people saying, and I've heard it for a little while from individuals, but not as much in the past as I do today. But I hear people say, oh, I don't have to go and be with that group of people just to prove I'm a Christian. I can worship God on my own. Truth is, you cannot worship God on your own in that sense and still maintain the spiritual growth you need to maintain. Because it takes all of us working together to be what we need to be. Plus, you're missing an element. This table. The items on this table. Oh, well, that's just crackers and grape juice. No. It's the body and blood of Jesus Christ. It's our memorial feast. As Israel had their memorial feast, you know, the feast of Passover, this is ours. And to neglect this shows spiritual immaturity. Oh, I can worship God by myself. I don't have to have people. I tried to do that. I did. I tried. When I was deployed on board ship, I tried for a little bit to do it my own. You know what I found out? It's kind of hard to sing worship and praise to God by yourself. Oh, you can do it. But it's not as fun. I tried to even partake of the Lord's Supper by myself. That was a little bit more difficult. But then I ran into some other guys that were Christians, that were on board ship, and we got together. And that made it a little bit more enjoyable. Because I found out I wasn't the only one on the ship that was trying to be what I needed to be. And we were all struggling at times and in various points. That's the same situation with the church today. We're all in our own little world, going through our own little life, doing our own little things. And when we come together, we have the ability to strengthen and to support and to lift up one another a whole lot easier together than we do apart. So what's important in our life? Who's important in our life? I mentioned in our class this morning, a problem we have in the church today is we've made other things important. There should never be anything more important than God in our life. Ever. My wife means the world to me. I would do anything for my wife. But God means more. I love her dearly. But if it's going to come between me and God, if it's going to become between her and God, we both know what decision the other one's going to make on that one. And I'm going to tell you right now, she's going to lose out if it becomes a choice between her and God, because God is that important. Because my wife cannot get me to heaven. God can. The second thing I want us to think about as we look at refocusing, I want us to think about how much time do we really spend with God. Football's getting ready to start up. A lot of people are excited. Here comes football. Man, depending on which way you look at it, preseason for the NFL just started 2 weeks ago, or about a week ago. And now we're probably, 2.5 weeks out from college football. Think about this. How many of those stadiums are going to be packed out every Saturday? Packed out. You're talking anywhere from 80,000, depending on how big the stadium is, to 110 to 115,000 screaming people in the fans or in the stands. They will go and they're going to sit. Have you ever been to a football stadium? They are some of the most uncomfortable seats in the world. But we're going to go and we're going to spend 3 hours either standing or sitting in those most uncomfortable seats. But how much time do we give God on Sunday? How much time do we give God on Monday? How much time do we give God on Tuesday or Wednesday or any other day of the week? How much time do we really give to God? But we're willing to go sit in those most uncomfortable seats and watch a bunch of guys beat themselves to death trying to move a ball from one field or from one end of the field to the other. And we'll do that for 3 hours screaming, being hoarse. Man, I've come home from baseball games hoarse as all get out, wondering how in the world am I going to be able to preach the next Sunday? Baseball seats are the same way. And baseball goes usually 2.5 to 3 hours also. Sometimes more. What are we going to do? How do we do it? Number one, what's important? But number two, how much time do we really spend with God? Last week, I challenged you. I asked you to start praying for our congregation again, as I did in January. I asked you to do it last week as well, through this entire month, praying for Cloverdale. Praying for the individual families and the individuals that are a part of our congregation. Just praying for them. You don't have to know what's going on in their lives to know that every single one of us is struggling somewhere in our life. We all need it. Paul usually started every letter off saying something to the effect, "Know that I am praying for you constantly." I want to add something this week. Not only do we need to be praying to God, I challenge you to spend anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes a day. You want to spend more? I'm not going to turn you down. Trust me. 15 to 30 minutes a day. Just in communication and study of God's Word. Do you know why I'm talking about these things? Because as we refocus, the areas that we need to refocus on are in our lives. And it's toward us and God. And if we're willing to refocus in those areas, it's amazing how things are going to change spiritually for us. But we have to be willing to do it. The third question I have is, are we walking as Jesus? Are we walking with Jesus? The night in which Jesus was betrayed, as Jesus was there in the garden, and the mob had come to him, and he had gone out to them, it's recorded that every one of them left him. Jesus' closest companions for the last 3 years have deserted him at the time he needed them. Well, if you read it that way. Or you can read it as John records, where Jesus looks at the mob and he says, "Hey, look, you want me, let them go." He goes into the Sanhedrin. He's going to be tried by the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin's going to take him to Pilate. Pilate's going to send him to Herod. Herod's going to send him back to Pilate because he won't do any miracles for him. And as he has washed his hands and he has given the choice, one of the statements he makes is, "Do you not know the power I have and that I can release you?" To Jesus' reply, and I love that reply, Jesus says, "You wouldn't have any power if it wasn't given to you." He also tells Pilate something even more unique that I like. He tells Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world. Because if it was of this world, my servants would rise up and I wouldn't be facing you right now. But it's not of this world." He's talking about the rise of the church that was going to take place in the first century. You want some encouragement? Look at what the first century church had to face. They had to face a world that is very similar to our own. Everyone did what they thought was right in their own eyes, and they didn't care what anybody else thought or said. It's where our world is today. Nobody cares what anybody thinks. Nobody's concerned about the well-being of others, only of themselves. Where are we in this? Because if we're walking like Jesus, you know, one of the greatest statements that Jesus makes, I don't have a place to lay my head. Do you ever think about what he meant by that? He was telling them, if you're going to follow me, you need to understand that I don't have anything here. I'm not offering anything here. Everything I'm offering is there. What are we doing? What is it going to take for us to be willing to be like Isaiah? You ever really think about Isaiah much? Remember in Isaiah chapter 6, we see the throne room of God. And as you get down around verse 6 to 8, there's a question that is posed, who will go? And Isaiah says the most famous words, here am I, send me. Have we bought into those words? Here am I, send me. Because those words don't say, here am I, send the evangelist. Here am I, send the elder. Here am I, send the deacon. Here am I, send. Here am I, send me. That's all of us. That's every Christian being involved in the work that needs to be involved in. I mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again. In one of our classes that I had with Stephen Guy, Stephen said the church is not a Fortune 500 company, but we do have a bottom line. Now, Fortune 500 companies look at that bottom line. They want to make sure that they're making a profit. And that's why they're a Fortune 500 company, is because they have men that look at that bottom line and say, we got to work differently here. We got to do this. We got to do that. And they have men under each of them that allow them to be able and make those decisions that need to be made, so that they keep the profit coming in. The church isn't about profit in the sense of what you and I may think of as profit, but we do have a bottom line. And here's what Stephen Guy said. He said the church's bottom line is about souls. And we have to ask ourselves, how is business? Because there's a lot of people that are lost and hurting and dying. How is business? Jesus offers a way out of the mess that our world is in. He says, if you believe that I am the Son of God, you may. So the question is, do we believe that Jesus is the Son of God? If we believe, are we willing to change our life from a life of sin to a life of righteousness? Are we willing to confess Him before men so that He can confess us before the Father? Are we willing to be immersed for the remission of our sins, calling on His name? For those of us that have done that, are we walking a faithful, obedient life to Him, or do we need to do something about it? If you're not walking faithful and obedient, I'm going to say, yes, you need to do something about it. Will you let us help? You have opportunity right now. All you have to do is step out and come forward while together we stand and sing this invitation song.